in 1972. That's a pretty whopping, 87% of them favor or do not oppose having homosexuals teach in the public schools, as an example, whereas only 50% of the population at large does. But the thing about that study is it was only testing their beliefs. It was not testing what they actually do in fact. And as a matter of fact, subsequent studies, also by respect to people like, for example, Michael Robinson down at George Washington University, have shown that this supposed bias that Senator Goldwater and others talk about a lot really is more in the eye of the beholder.
On the question of distribution of the kinds of people in the newsroom, those studies also indicate that by and large the people on the air at major networks are people who make a heck of a lot more money than the average viewer. And the perception of the way the world looks is in the eye of that beholder who makes so much more. So the news could be coverage of the recession, for instance. Been a lot of criticism of the CBS coverage of the recession in particular.
You mean rich reporters sympathize with the poor more than poor reporters?
It's not necessary. No, not sympathizing with the poor at all. In other words, they are coming from what some would call an ivory tower. So, for instance, the coverage of the recession which President Reagan criticized because the cameras were going out to look for examples of great cuts, and we were putting them on the air as if this was the story, as opposed to all the people who weren't hurt by the Reagan cuts or were helped by the Reagan cuts. That comes from the perception of the person who goes out to cover that story.
Yes, I think there's a little truth in that. I think it was a little overdone. We used to have, or economists used to use a symbol, a graphic, we'd call it in this business, that we tried once at CBS News to use to show this problem of unemployment. It didn't work very well, but that's the donut and the hole. You know, the hole may get bigger. There's more unemployment, more people out of work. But that donut's getting bigger too. The total employment may be greater. And how do you show that graphically? And you had some of that situation at one time. We tried it, but it doesn't work very well.
I tell you where I think a certain kind of bias comes in, and it's not really an ideological bias, Republicans versus Democrats, is a kind of maybe a populistic bias in the news. Every news organization is trying to identify with the viewer out there. And
trying to make him happy or identify?
No, trying to
identify with
What's wrong with
them. There's nothing wrong with that, except that when you take a subject like unemployment, for example, okay, unemployment may have even gone down marginally, but the thought is there are individuals out there who are still hurting. So then they run and find the individuals who are hurting rather than focusing. It's a little hard to show how this marginal reduction in unemployment has helped anybody. It's very easy to show anecdotally how somebody out of work is still hurting. And I think that you do find perhaps a tendency maybe to dwell on the hardship of individuals.
Let me follow that thought, because I think a major problem in the perception of bias has to do with an understanding of what the news media is here for, or how we perceive ourselves, our role in society. Our role is not to praise. We are not cheerleaders. We are here to criticize. We're here to look for faults in our society. The story is told if you're driving down the road in a car and you have a flat tire. Do you get out and admire the 3 tires that are up, or do you fix the flat? Journalists are looking for flats before they go flat. That contributes to the perception of bias, because when we cover government...
You're saying it's all bad news, and that's...
We are looking for the faults of government because nobody else will. The president is not going to report on the faults of his administration at his news conference. Big business is not going to take out ads to expose their faults. Neither is big labor.
Well, maybe that's why the public has lost confidence in television news.
Because they don't understand what we do.
See, in the charter that I read in journalism school, I was never told only to look for faults.
As a matter of fact...
Why does the press exist then?
The press exists to some extent to try to paint a picture of reality so people can operate within what
But the most important part of that reality is what's wrong with our society, not what's right with it.
Yeah, but you see, I think that stems
society
from
or the process of government or whatever.
Yeah, it stems from a flaw in our political system, that we do not have a good, strong two-party system. It ought to be up to the opposition to confront those in power. It shouldn't have to be left to the fourth estate. And I think, as you're suggesting, it's rather dangerous for us to be always the ones, for the press to be always the ones confronting authority, questioning authority.
If the public understands this role, I don't think we have a problem. Well, and I think that's what we have to do. That's what we have to accomplish, is explain to them how this role as critic, as looking for what's wrong, contributes to a better society.